everybody. Welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Amber. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. My friends, because of the sake of time, I decided this week, even though there is so much going on in the world, that we are just going to focus on this document for this program. And next week, we'll try to cover some more of the information that's out there with current events. Folks, for those of you that have not been watching or missed a couple of programs, we are studying Operators Research Technical Manual. That's Tango Michael Sierra Whiskey 7905.1. As I've said previously, please, of course, they're watching all of us. They've got portfolios on all of us. They have analogs developed on all of us. We know this. But if you do not wish to be flagged, a particular red flag, do not bring this document up on your personal computer or your home computer because they are going to be watching you, very close scrutiny, should you go forward and research this. So you can go to the library, print it out there, do whatever you got to do, but if you don't want to be red flagged, do not bring this document up. Okay, I am just going to read a brief intent statement of this document, and then we're going to pick up where we took off last week. Again, this is Operators Research Technical Manual, Tango Michael Sierra Whiskey 7905.1. Okay, intent. It is patently impossible to discuss social engineering or the automation of a society, i.e. the engineering of social automation systems, silent weapons, on a national or worldwide scale without implying extensive objectives of social control and destruction of human life, i.e. slavery and genocide. This manual is in itself an analog declaration of intent. Such a writing must be secured from public scrutiny. Otherwise, it might be recognized as a technical, formal declaration of domestic war. Furthermore, whenever any person or group of persons in a position of great power and without the full knowledge and consent of the public uses such knowledge and methodology for economic conquest, must be understood that a state of domestic warfare exists between said person or group of persons and the public. The solution of today's problems requires an approach which is ruthlessly candid with no agonizing over religious, moral, or cultural values. Okay, now, again, that's the intent, folks. So while we understand what their intent is, let us get back into some historical quotes. This is one from Noah Webster. Education is useless without the Bible. The Bible was America's basic textbook in all fields. God's word contained in the Bible has furnished all necessary rules to direct our conduct. Folks, I totally agree with this. And when the feds took over the education system in the United States, what's the very first thing they did? They say, well, they eliminated prayer. Well, yeah, that was one aspect of it. They did eliminate prayer. But they eliminated God's word for morality and culture and love and implemented a dumbed-down secular, I would use it, indoctrination. They went from a secular indoctrination and away from a moralistic education based on God's word. Okay, let us continue. This is Mr. Huxley, and I know I read these to you last week, but this is going to fit in so well with what we're going to get into today. By means of ever more effective methods of mind manipulation, the democracies will change their nature. Well, the mind manipulation and the democracies will change their nature. Of course. We went from a biblical Christian society to a secular indoctrination, which changed through mind manipulation, has changed our nature, hasn't it? The quaint old forms, elections, parliaments, Supreme Courts, and all the rest will remain. The underlying substance will be a new kind of totalitarianism. All the traditional names, all the hallowed slogans will remain exactly what they were in the good old days. Democracy and freedom will be the theme of every broadcast and editorial. Meanwhile, the ruling oligarchy and its highly trained elite of soldiers, policemen, thought manufacturers, and mind manipulators will quietly run the show as they see fit. Mr. Huxley, the perfect dictatorship would have the appearance of a democracy, but would basically be a prison without walls in which the prisoners would not even dream of escaping. It would essentially be a system of slavery where, through consumption and entertainment, the slaves would love their servitudes. Let us continue. The essence of all slavery consists in taking the product of another's labor by force. It is immaterial whether this force be founded upon ownership of the slave or ownership of the money that he must get to live. Leo Tolstoy. Okay, so now we have a good understanding here of the intent of this document. Of course, we've covered, I think we're on page 21 right now. We understand the manipulators, the statements, and some of the goals that were put into place and have been implemented. And now we have this document which, from 1979, which is their modus operandi. And after we've read all this, we understand, number one, that what was stopping them before was not their intent, it was the technology. They did not have the technology to create the society that they wanted and to have all the data inputs and to come up with all these analogs. Now they do. And they have for quite a while, as we've read to you. So, what we are studying now is the short list of outputs. We got into inputs, how they consolidated and condensed and collected all of this information on us. And now we're getting the short list of outputs. And the outputs, folks, according to this document, create, and I agree with it, create controlled situations, manipulation of the economy, hence society itself. It controls by controlling of compensation and income. Okay? So now we break down these segments of the short list of outputs. Again, the outputs create controlled situations, manipulation of the economy, hence society. Okay. We left off on number 15, controls the legal functions. Now, we, in this country, everybody knows that we used to have common law in this country. We no longer have common law, my friends. We have law mercantile, commercial law. They have taken the law of the sea, admiralty law, and placed it here on land, is what they've done. And we are the commercial entities that are controlled by this commercial law because we are contracting through commercial law with all of these alphabet agencies. And this is why, my friends, they always need your signature. They always need your signature because everything is an offer of contract to you. And they are contracting in law with what's called a norme de guerre. A norme de guerre is French for guerrilla, name of war. A norme de guerre. So our legal system, notice I didn't say lawful system, because there is a distinct difference between a lawful system and a legal system. A legal system operates through intimidation, corruption, where a lawful system is based on a representative body creating laws that the people agree with and adhere to. In a common law system, folks, if you do not interfere, disrupt, harm a person or a person's property, or their pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, then the law system had nothing to do with you in a common law system. But when they put us into a commercial law system, and they being the international bankers, we all became commercial entities. Again, this term, nom de guerre. And if you look at your operator's license, you know it as a driver's license, but now it's called an operator's license. You see, because a driver, folks, is one who engages on public roads for commercial use. And that's why the first license that you need, the word license means to be given permissionable, which would otherwise be unpermissionable. In other words, they're giving you permission to do something that if you didn't have their permission to do it, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. License. So the driver of a vehicle is a commercial entity. Now, there was a case out in, I believe it was Ohio some years ago, where a person was involved in a motor vehicle accident, and the person was at fault. He had rear-ended, as we say, an elderly female, and this case goes to court, and the person was very much educated into all this, and the magistrate, as a judge, says, I have no responsibility for this. So the judge says, are you saying that you did not strike Mrs. So-and-so? And the person said, oh, no, I did. I struck it. This was an accident, and I did. But I would suggest that you take this up with the true owner of the vehicle, which was the state of Ohio, I believe it was, as I said. So what happened? The cat was out of the bag, you see. Now, the state of Ohio was potentially liable for this claim because they are the true owners of the vehicle. State of fill in the blank. This is why, as I said last week, you get a certificate of title. Folks, anytime you get a certificate of title, that means that the person that actually owns that entity is allowing you to use it. You do not own it. You have a certificate of title for your land. As I've said to you many times in demonstration of this, that go get your deed and you will see you have a certificate of title and you are a tenant, a joint tenant, or a tenant in common. But either way, you are a tenant. You are not an owner. You do not have a allodial title. And this was all done through Senate Document 43, as we've read to you many, many times, that all property is in the state and subordinate to the necessities of the state. And folks, every judge, every attorney to atone to separate one from one's property knows this. And this is why the attorney swears, and he'll ask your attorney. See, we say attorney, attorney. Ask that attorney, who are you liable to first? Me as the client or the court? Well, their oath, they took an oath to the British Accreditation Registry. You know it as the Bar Association. And this is why attorneys are called esquires which is a title of British nobility. So when they say controls the legal functions, they're not just talking about ownership, they're talking about the complete segment of law. It is a legal system, not a lawful system. I remember my third grade teacher all the time used to say, sign in your legal name. Sign in your legal name. Well, what is my legal name and what does that represent? It represents the uppercase that's on your driver's operator's license. It represents the uppercase entity, the nom de guerre, that anytime you get a letter from the government or a corporation or the insurance company, whatever. You ever notice how your name is always uppercase black ink? It's because, again, they are contracting with the nom de guerre, the commercial entity. Let us continue. 16, controls the personal data files, uncorrectable by the party slandered. Absolutely. Isn't this true? Everything that has an RFID chip that you purchase is sending them information. This is what Betrayers said, that we are going to collect data on you through your appliances, your refrigerators, your washing machines. And they're doing that today, folks. And they never mind just listening to all our conversations or everything, all the social media. Because we never, again, we're Americans. We never read the terms of policies. We just click OK. Or sign here. We don't read contracts anymore. Hell, some of them are so long, you would need a lawyer just to break down the language for you to open up, say, a Facebook account. We don't read it, do we? But we click OK, don't we? And so all this data is collected on us. Do you realize they have from birth our DNA to our death, they are collecting every single segment of data about us on our daily lives. Land of the free? What happened to the Fourth Amendment? Can you say the 14th Amendment? There shall be no what? No what? No involuntary servitude. Why didn't they just say, and this was after the Civil War, folks, this is when they federalized everybody. Why didn't they just say no servitude? Why is it they put that you could be servitude if you volunteered for it? No involuntary servitude. Well, by not reading these contracts, by acknowledging all this, it's okay, we hit okay, we sign here, we have RFID chips and everything. What's that? That's voluntary servitude. It's very simple. And don't think that they're collecting all this without putting it to use. As I told you, I believe it was Amazon, that they have a 92% accuracy rating of having your order prepared for you before you make the order, because they're watching what you're researching, they understand all the analogs they've got about you, and they have a 92% accuracy rate of putting together your order before you order it. Let us continue. Controls advertising. Not just the products. What about the subliminal messages? What about controlling advertising things that we do not want you to have, that all the forbidden science that's out there that they do not allow us to have? See, it works both ways, folks. Here's what can be available to you, And here's what we're not going to let be available to you. And as Huxley said, we're going to keep you in a state of consumption and what? Entertainment. And they control both of them entities through what? Advertising. Let us continue. Controls all media content. And this is why they're very upset with many programs that they're trying to shut down right now, because they're self-funded. And by them being self-funded, they can't be controlled. See, if you're nationally syndicated and you're taking money from advertisers, well, guess what, folks? They're going to dictate what you're able to broadcast. And if you can self-fund your operation and you don't need that outside source of funding to control your criteria, guess what? Now you're a threat to them. And this is why they are going after so many sites right now that are part of the Patriot movement. And there is a Patriot movement. And they're doing all they can. And they're using all of their avenues to squander all these efforts to bring truth and history and facts to the American people and the people of the world, for that matter, now with the World Wide Web. This is what they're after. And this is why that's such a threat to them. Controls material available for TV viewing. Like I just said, they are controlling what information can be presented to you, and not just through the schools and the churches, but through where the average American spends 6 hours of his or her day in front of the tube. All of that is edited and siphoned to keep you going down the avenue that they want you traveling. Listen to this. Disengages attention from real issues. What was it J.P. Morgan said? We will keep the American people thinking about issues that are of no importance to us being the international bankers. Let me read that again to you. Disengages attention from real issues. Real issues. Things that really matter to you. Pocketbook issues, all these. You're not going to get the real facts of them. How many of the American people, what do you think the percentage of the American people that understand such a basic thing that the Federal Reserve is a private for-profit banking corporation? I'll bet you now it's probably 3 to 4%. Or maybe more, because we have had a lot of success in educating the American people. So let's say 5 or 6. How is it that a person, and a dear friend of mine, graduates with a degree in economics, college, opens up his own mortgage company, a successful mortgage company, mortgage, death pledge, opens up a successful mortgage company and has a degree in economics and didn't know and didn't believe me that the Federal Reserve was a private for-profit banking corporation. I had to go to the Congressional Record and present that to him. And then I had to present Eustace Mullins' book to him. And then I had to present G. Edward Griffith's book to him. I actually bought it for him, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Why is that? Why is that, my friends? Because it disengages attention from real issues. How is it that every mother in this country bonded their children through a document that they created called the birth certificate, and no mothers in the country know what they did, or very few. Maybe 0.2%. I didn't say 2%, I said 0.2% for you poor Common Core students. How is that? Because they're keeping us disengaged from real issues by controlling the information that we use to come to conclusions with. And the Federal Reserve name, as an example, was put in deceitfully by Paul Warburg because they wanted the American people to believe that it was part of the federal government, so they used the word federal. They knew they were going to confiscate all the intrinsic wealth of the country, the gold, the silver, all the property, which they have done. Again, this is why you have certificate of title. And they used the word reserve to sow the seed that when the American people do, through the force of duress, give up our gold and silver and all their property and bond all their children through this facade debt, that we're going to sow the seed that we're all going to put this somewhere for them. So they use the word reserve. And let's not forget, it was all created through lies, the Federal Reserve Act. It was created through facade crisis. They got everybody in debt by loosening the credit, the roaring 20s. Then they played the call option. They drew back the M3, the money supply. It all failed. Everyone took a run on the banks. All the community banks failed. Federal Reserve Act put into place December 21st, 1913, while the Congress is away for the Christmas break. And think of it, folks. You think of this. It only took them 16 years, once they controlled the issuance of the currency, to destroy the greatest laissez-faire economy in the history of the world. Let us continue. Engages emotions. Vitally important. And I'm just going to say this. The Hegelian dialectic engages emotions. Folks, of course they use emotions to get the desired result that they're looking for. And the number one way they do it is by creating crisis. Again, follow me on the triangle. You create a crisis. You get the emotional response you want from the people. And as Hegel said, you've got to have fear. And if you can throw in some anger into the equation, even better. But you had to have fear. And hopefully anger. Create the crisis, emotional response. You bring in the solution, which the people will wholeheartedly accept the decline of their rights, of their liberties, and they'll pay for the cost of their own slavery. Because of that emotional response that was created by them creating the crisis. So they use emotions on us constantly. And it's always for the children. It's always for the children. What was it Janet Reno said when she was asked about, why did the children have to die at Waco? What did she say? We did it for the children. Folks, go on the internet, look that up. She was the Attorney General at the time. Why did the children have to die? Well, we did it for the children. Madeleine Albright, when she's asked, boy, we've killed 500,000 children in Iraq. Do you really think that's worth it? Madeleine Albright snickers and says, oh yeah, we think that's worth it. It's always for the children, folks. They can kill children through abortion. That's all good and proper. Sell their body parts for profit. What they can't sell in some hospitals in England, what they can't sell for body parts, particularly to China, some hospitals in England, as we read to you verbatim, I think 3 or 4 years ago, are using carcasses of dead babies for fuel to heat their hospitals. But we do it for the children. Sex trade, Pedophilia is rampant in the world of the elite. And I don't care if you're talking academia. I don't care what part of it you're talking in the elite world. The banking, I don't care about it. Look at Elaine Brofman. All right? Elaine Brofman, one of the richest ladies in the world. $120 million bond. Why? Because what she's doing with children warrants a $120 million bond. Let us continue. Creates disorder, chaos, and insanity. Of course. Ordo ab chaos. Order from chaos. It's what they do. Because if you create chaos, the people have an emotional response of what? Fear. You see? And to keep us divided, have the race riots. There's fear. Go to wars. There's fear. Balkanize countries. There's fear. And the people, through that response of the created fear, through the chaos, will welcome their pre-concluded solution. And they'll give up their rights, as I've said, their liberties. And they'll pay the cost in sweat, equity, and blood. Create chaos. Order from chaos. Order ab deo, Latin. Order from chaos. And while we're into Latin, there's so much qui bono. Who benefits? Anytime there's a crisis, folks, look back. Number one, when there's a crisis, understand a couple things here. One, it was pre-planned. It was financed. It was organized. It was implemented. Understand that. Understand that. What was it FDR said? If it happened in politics, you can bet it was meant to happen that way. Doesn't matter if he's talking about World War II or the drug war. Doesn't matter. Controls design of more probing tax forms. How about that? How about all these other government forms? Have you seen your latest census form lately? It's unbelievable. It's 12 pages, depending which one you get. The census was meant only to take a number count. That was it. Now, they want to know every little single personal thing about you and your family and your household. Oh, and they do it under the threat of the legal system, under the duress of the legal system. Now, the legal system is also a mismatch of protection for the people that play along with the just us system. But at our end of life in this society, it has been weaponized against us. So, yeah, it does control the design of more probing tax forms, but it also, all the other fill-in-the-blank alphabet agencies that send you these things to be filled out under the threat of law. Controls surveillance. There is not any aspect of your life that they are not surveilling you in multiple ways. Not one. Not one. Inside the walls of your house, your personal communications, your social media, your jobs, your forms you got to fill out. There is not one form of, not one essence of your life that they are not collecting data on successfully. Not one. And folks, half the time, actually more than half the time, I would say about 80% of the time, we agreed to it. Why? Because we live in a state of fear and we're ignorant people. We've been dumbed down. through a very costly indoctrination system that you know as the public fool system. So that's complete. Actually, everything I have read to you folks is complete, and then some. Let us continue. Controls the storage of information. They've got a personal portfolio on every single one of us, including our DNA if you were born after 1978. And don't forget, your mother bonded you and gave the hospital permission to to send the DNA to the government. We don't read contracts anymore, do we? Sign here, click here, sign here, click here. That's all we do. We're like Pavlov's dog, aren't we? That's all we are. We are nothing more, folks, than Pavlov's dog. Because Pavlov's dog couldn't reason. Pavlov's dog was indoctrinated. It was trained. It knew nothing but to follow commands. The American people are Pavlov's dog. It's very simple. Very, very simple. Yep, they control the storage of information. Now, the legal system says they're not supposed to spy on Americans domestically. So what do? They collect the information, they send it overseas, and then they send it back to Utah, the big NSA center in Utah, because guess what? We're not spying on you according to the justice system and the court system. Why? Because we are collecting the information from overseas. Look it up. Let me see. Vault 4, Vault 7, and the Snowden papers all have that in there. Folks, Operation Echelon in the early 90s was doing that. Never mind 2018. Let us continue. This is very important. Develop psychological analysis and profiles of all individuals. Number 26. Develop psychological analysis and profiles of all individuals. That's you and me. Folks, this is how Amazon knows with a 92% success rate what you're going to order before you order it, because they have got every aspect of data of our life collected. They have the analogs put together. They know what we're going to do quite successfully before we even complete the act. Think of that. Develop psychological analysis and profiles of all individuals. How's that sound? Controls sociological factors. Okay. Folks, how do you control sociological factors? You do this by collecting data, analyzing the data, and storing the data, and shock testing the data of each individual in that society, and then you paint it into a broad brush. Very simple, isn't it? See, because if they know what our patterns, what our thinking, what our lack of reasoning is individually, well, of course they're going to know collectively as a society what we're going to do. That's very simple. Controls health options. Controls health options. Now, I read this to you verbatim some years ago. The AMA, the American Medical Association, folks, is a Rockefeller Foundation. The World Health Organization. All of these organizations are meant to keep us sick. What was it I read from Robert Kennedy Jr. this past week? That the CDC last year made a profit of $4.1 billion on the 46 patents, pharmaceutical patents that they own. You ever see all these commercials? Hey, did you take this med? If you have these symptoms, call us because you can be financially rewarded. Folks, and they're every day, and there's many of them. How did all of these drugs get by the big CDC looking out for our well-being? How did all them drugs get out in the marketplace? How? How is it that the federal government passed laws that we are not allowed to directly sue pharmaceutical companies? How? And how many Americans know about the vaccine court that has now given out $3.8 billion in damages that we finance? And you may ask, how is that we finance that, Tom? Anytime you buy a pill, a med, anything from your doctor, a percentage of your fees goes to this funding for this court. That's right. The pharmaceutical companies don't, never mind that they don't get sued, it's against the law. The legal system stops them from being pursued legally. They don't even pay into the fund for the tribune court, the private tribune court, for claims against their products. They don't even pay for it. We do. So we suffer and we pay for it with our sweat equity also. And who profits? Key bono. Who's profiting here? Who's benefiting? The CDC and the pharmaceutical companies and everybody else in the healthcare industry. And who has the most expensive healthcare in the Western world with the highest cancer rates? I couldn't believe this, that the United States is one of the leading countries in the Western world of infant morbidity. Infants dying during birth or shortly thereafter. And we are like number 4 in the Western world in mothers dying giving birth. How is that? Yet we have the most expensive medical enterprise in the world. But yet we're the sickest. We lead the world in autism. But don't look at the vaccines. But the very same health departments, these hospitals with their employees, will make their employees take the flu shot, which, just read the insert, not the back, read the insert. You ever notice how they never give you the insert? You want to know why, folks? Because there's a whole plethora list of ailments that you will come down with. Never mind, you'll have the flu worse than you ever had in your life, but potential death. How is that? Why? Because it controls health options. Let us continue. Number 30, praise on weaknesses. Praise on weaknesses. You see, folks, and you think that this government is just a big benevolent organization looking for you. Folks, this document is their modus operandi. Praise on weaknesses. We have weaknesses that we have intention weaknesses. We have weaknesses that they can develop by putting us in certain environments. We have weaknesses that they can create. They say, how about the weakness of addiction? Why do you think there was 2 opium wars for the control of opium, folks? Why do you think we went to Afghanistan? One of the big reasons, what's the number 2 area? The second area, when we went into Afghanistan, where'd we go? We went to the Golden Crescent because the Taliban for 14 years had outlawed the growing of poppy. That's how they make heroin, folks. Outlawed it. Can't have that. Got to have we got to have the heroin in the streets of America and Europe. We got to decay the society. We have to create the weakness individually so we can implement societally. You see? So we have all these heroin addicts. Well, you got to give up your rights because we have this terrible heroin addiction going on. You see how they can create weaknesses? You know, alcohol wasn't a problem until the government said, we're going to have prohibition. Why'd they do that? And then 14 years later, go back to drinking again, alcohol? Why? Because all they did was shut down the independent person producing alcohol, and they controlled that industry. That's what prohibition was all about. It was to get control of the alcohol industry. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. And what were these folks called? These enforcers of prohibition. You know what they were called? You'll never hear this, folks. They were called revenuers, as in revenue, because the people back then understood what was going on. They made criminals out of people that had been brewing and distilling for generations. They made criminals out of them. Folks, you know that's where NASCAR came from, believe it or not? You know the difference between Everclear and moonshine? It's the same product. You see, Everclear is the Everclear product. The reason why it became moonshine and it's the same product was because when they did the prohibition, the people weren't willing just to give up their distilling that they've been doing in their families for generations, for hundreds of years. So they had to distill secretly out in the woods at night and work by the light of the moon, hence moonshine. And this is where NASCAR came from. Preys on weaknesses, and not just our own intentional or unintentional weaknesses, but weaknesses that they can create. Cripples strengths. Number 31, cripples strengths. How do they cripple strengths? They'll take a person of intelligence and dumb him down. They'll take a person of good health and give him GMO food, fluoride in the water, chemtrails, vaccinations, and make this person very sick and ill. Because a person who can think for himself, a person who is not indoctrinated, who knows how to reason, a healthy person is much more difficult to control than a person of ignorance, apathy, and ill health. And after all, what is their goal objective? To control the objectives of social control and destruction of human life, i.e. slavery and genocide. Very simple. Very, very simple. Cripples strengths. Nationalism. Faith in God, the understanding of morality, the understanding of true history, the understanding of importance of a republican form of government. We're not a democracy, folks. We never intended to be a democracy. If it preys on weaknesses and cripples strengths, Who do you think is benefiting here? Is it me and you? Is it the future of our children and our nation? No. Cui bono. The bankers who implement this program have benefited from day one. They own all the wealth of the world, well, most of it. Most of the physical, intrinsic wealth of the world, folks, they own. You don't own a damn thing. Nothing. Zero. You're in a commercial law system, you're bonded. In a commercial law system, you're either a creditor or a debtor, and if you're bonded, my friends, you are a debtor. Debtors cannot own anything in a commercial law system. This is, again, why you get a certificate of title and not a lloydial title, or say your automobile, the manufacturer's certificate of origination. Why does that go to the state, put on their books as an asset, and then they cut you a certificate of title for it? Are you benefiting from that? No, because you're no longer, you got to pay for all this, number one, but you're no longer under jurisprudence, are you? No, now that vehicle owned by a corporation, an insolvent corporation at that, but owned by a corporation, now is in a commercial venue of law on a commercial roads. You've lost your right to travel. Now your right to travel is become a benefit, which can be altered and or taken away at the whim of the grantor. Let us continue. Number 32, leeches wealth and substance. Leeches wealth and substance. Do we as a people have any wealth? Any wealth at all? Any recognized wealth in the history of mankind? Well, let me see. We don't own our land. We don't own our cars. We don't own our children. That's true. So we have a debt, note, private bank script for our medium of exchange, which we're the co-surety for. We have to get permission to improve what we perceive to be our own house and pay them to do it, to improve their house, because they're the ones who own it. That's why they give us a certificate of title, remember? So of course you have to go get permission from them. They own it to improve it. And then they're going to penalize you through taxes because you had the gall to improve their building. How dare you try to produce in this nation, Mr. and Mrs. America? They have confiscated all the wealth and substance, my folks. It's done. And we, by the law, by the legal system, have it to the point that we don't even know what we're eating. We think we're eating a tomato, but this is all GMO, and we don't even know what we're actually eating. Substance. You can't get it without paying them. You can't change its form without paying them. You can't gather it without paying them. You can't improve it without paying them. And we have given all the wealth to these bankers, every bit of it. Every bit of it. There's nothing you own. Zero. So yes, my friends, I would say they've been very successful at number 32. Leeches wealth and substance. My friends, we're going to stop right here. And I want to say very much thank you for watching our program. I know some of this information seems so far-fetched and so abstract that you have a hard time believing this is real. Again, this is Operators Research Technical Manual, Tango Michael Sierra Whiskey 7905.1. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, to obtain knowledge, and to manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. We thank you for watching.
Got the